Crouse.
Let's talk about John Rutsey a little bit. I found that part of the documentary quite fascinating because I knew the band, or knew of the band then. Working Man, certainly songs like that it had a much more straight ahead kind of feel to them. But tell me a little bit about touching on the John Rutsey stuff with the band, because I think it's Getty or perhaps Alex in the documentary who says, it's like being in high school, and when you leave, you go, you know what, we're going to be friends for our whole lives, and then you never see them again. And it kind of struck me that that's kind of the way it was with the band and John Rutsey. So tell me just a little bit about that. Once he left the band and they went on to become very successful, what happened to him? And I mean, he was ill, but what happened beyond that with him, and how the band feels about him?
They kept in touch. That much I know. Yeah, and I actually don't know what John went on to do himself after Rush, but I mean, on the point of him leaving the band, I mean, it was actually important for us that we talked to Vic Wilson, who is kind of the forgotten other half of the Rush management team back in the early days, and because there was always a lot of mythology or misunderstanding as to why John left Rush or was kicked out of Rush. There's always a lot of confusion, and it was important to us that we kind of got that part of the story straight, that it was ultimately because of his health problems. It wasn't because, at least at that time, it wasn't because of his musical limitation. Because a little known fact about John Rutsey is he was essentially the leader of the band.
It seems
in the early days.
It seems that he was the one who was sort of mugging for the cameras in the things, in the photographs. He was sort of front and center often.
He used to address the audience, and
he used to have real banter with the audience, back and forth, and
he used to kind of push the band and help put up the gig posters, and he would be the guy that kind of handled the money of the band before they got management and stuff like that. So, I mean, in the big picture, and we've got some good response on this from the Tribeca Rush fans that we showed last week, was that people are pleased that we at least touched on the Rutsey chapter, because it is kind of a forgotten chapter, but it's an important one because they all grew up together. Mm-hmm. He was the other third of that kind of Willowdale gang, right? And so it was important.
And it's unfortunate because when we started to make the film, and then we went away and did the Iron Maiden film, and we came back to Rush, he had passed away within that time, and we could have met with him, and we missed that opportunity to
well, I spoke with you guys around, I guess, for the Iron Maiden film around that time, and he had just passed away. It was literally within days or something.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's unfortunate. But maybe it's better to remember him as he's seen on the...
Well, he looked like a rock star, that's for sure. Yeah, he certainly had that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean... I think a really fortuitous thing for us was that we found that early footage of Rutsey playing, at Laura Secord Secondary School in St. Catharines, and to this day it's the only known footage of John playing with the band, and we dug up some old radio interviews that John had done as well. So it was really that early part of the band's history that was important for us to tell, because it's sort of an unknown chapter. Right. What happened up to Neil joining the band? That's sort of a much better documented period of the band's career. So it was sort of everything leading up to that was a huge part of the story.
Right. It's interesting, when I saw the film here in Toronto, the audience was pretty much split evenly between men and women. Yeah. Going in, all the men were like, I love Rush. They were the first band I saw, or I saw them at a high school, or, that kind of thing. And the women were, generally speaking, kind of, my husband likes them, my boyfriend listens to them occasionally. But tell me a little bit about how people, once they see, because on the way out, everyone was saying, well, I understand now why. If they weren't fans before, they would say, I understand now why, my husband likes them so much. Tell me what you hope people take away from the film.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I was with Getty in New York after the opening in Tribeca, and he had done press all day the day before, and he was like, I've never had so many women press want to talk to us. like they actually really got something from the documentary. And I guess that's it. It's like we think that the guys are there's sometimes you can just see the band Rush or see the name Rush, and you can dismiss, or you think what that is, right? And I think what we hoped with the documentary is you get to know them as human beings and as artists, and through their life and their career. And I think that a lot of people that that's what the non-Rush fans are identifying with, is that human story with the band, and that's what we had hoped, you know.
Well, I think it's kind of amazing to see, you know, Geddy Lee laughing or telling a joke, because you don't imagine, if you just know the music, you don't imagine that they are guys who would sort of sit around a you know, dinner table joking with one another at all.
God bless Rush for having a good sense of humor, because if it wasn't for that, the film would have been really boring. I mean, and as we got to know the guys and we were making the film, that's one thing that we became fascinated with was, okay, these guys are goofballs. Yeah. And yet they make this music that's so serious, so cerebral, so intellectual, all these things. And yet when you get them in a room together, when they don't have their instruments, it's like the Three Stooges. Like, you can't stop them from joking, you know? And so I think it was that kind of dichotomy that enriched the story. And in the long run, it was also the fact that there's a friendship, and that humor that they share is a huge part of their longevity as well, is that when they're not creating music, they're friends. Yeah. And I think that's really hard to find. Mm-hmm. You know, Maiden, we love them, they're great, but it's not like their longevity is because they're good communicators, and you know, like it's because they like bulldoze their way across the world, you know, with the Iron Maiden gauntlet. You know, it's a different kind of approach, but I think it was that humor that was a kind of a whole value-added aspect to the film.
Right. That's right.
Richard Crouse.